To some people, he is a brilliant legal mind, totally committed to the original words of the Constitution. To others, well, he's a deeply controversial figure. Today, we're going to try and unpack the really complex story of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, his journey, his ideas, and the huge questions that are still swirling around him.
And make no mistake, his influence is absolutely undeniable. We're talking more than 30 years on the nation's highest court. He is its most senior associate justice, which means his opinions and his vote carry an immense amount of weight, shaping the law for literally millions of Americans.
So how do you even begin to make sense of such a towering figure? Well, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at his truly unlikely rise from poverty. Then, we'll dive deep into the legal philosophy that guides his decisions. We're also going to revisit his explosive confirmation hearing. And finally, we'll take a look at the modern ethical questions that have put him right back in the spotlight. So let's start at the beginning, with a journey that honestly seems almost impossible. From the deep poverty of the Jim Crow South, all the way to a lifetime seat on the Supreme Court. This timeline just really captures the incredible arc of his life. I mean, look at where it starts, 1948, born in Pinpoint, Georgia, and his first language was Gullah. Now, fast forward to 1968, and he's at Holy Cross, a student activist helping found the Black Student Union. From there, it's Yale Law School, then a major appointment by Ronald Reagan in 1982, and finally the big one, the nomination to the Supreme Court in 1991. It is a remarkable climb through some of America's most powerful institutions. And that journey is really what shaped the man who would go on to develop a very specific and incredibly powerful judicial philosophy. You see, to understand Justice Thomas's impact on the court, you have to understand originalism. So what is originalism? Well, to put it simply, it's the idea that the Constitution should mean today exactly what it was understood to mean back when it was written. For an originalist like Thomas, the job isn't to adapt the Constitution to modern times, but to apply its original public meaning to today's cases. And this is how he puts that philosophy into practice. It's a method called textualism. Think of it this way. The only thing that matters are the words written on the page. For Justice Thomas, any legal analysis starts and ends right there, with the plain, ordinary meaning of the text. Nothing else, not what lawmakers were thinking, not how society has changed, should get in the way. And this brings us to one of his most radical and influential ideas. This quote right here, it really shows his deep skepticism of stare decisis, that long-standing principle that courts should stick to their past rulings. Here's the key takeaway. For Justice Thomas, if a past decision was just flat out wrong, demonstrably erroneous, as he says, and it violates the Constitution's original meaning, then the court has a duty to tear it down. It doesn't matter how long it's been the law of the land. But this uncompromising philosophy wasn't the first time he found himself at the center of a national firestorm. His confirmation hearings back in 1991 would become one of the most explosive and, frankly, unforgettable political dramas in modern American history. So the hearings were completely upended by testimony from Anita Hill, a law professor who had worked for Thomas. She alleged that he had repeatedly subjected her to sexually explicit comments and unwanted advances. And in her testimony, she gave these graphic details about conversations involving pornography. Thomas, for his part, categorically denied every single allegation. He framed the whole thing as a politically motivated smear campaign. And in response, Thomas delivered this: an unforgettable and incredibly powerful statement. By invoking the history of lynching, he completely reframed the entire narrative. All of a sudden, the hearing wasn't just about what he did or didn't do. It was about race, identity, and the politics of power in America. It was a moment that just electrified the entire nation. In the end, the Senate confirmed him. But just look at that vote, 52-48. It was the narrowest margin for a Supreme Court confirmation in over a century. That number alone tells you just how deep the divisions were that his nomination had exposed. All right, now let's fast forward a few decades. Justice Thomas is once again at the center of intense scrutiny. But this time, it's all focused on questions of judicial ethics and disclosure. So what is this all about? Well, a series of investigative reports have uncovered what appears to be a pattern of undisclosed luxury travel and financial ties between Justice Thomas and some wealthy benefactors. And this has sparked a major debate over the ethical standards for the country's highest court. And to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, well, just look at this number.
According to an analysis by the watchdog group Fix the Court, the estimated value of gifts Justice Thomas has accepted over the last 2 decades is staggering, over $4.2 million.
Naturally, the Senate Judiciary Committee launched its own investigation, and its report laid out some pretty damning findings. The report alleges that Justice Thomas ignored his legal duty to disclose these gifts, things like luxury trips on private jets and yachts paid for by the billionaire Harlan Crow. The committee even called the scale of these gifts unprecedented in modern American history, and also pointed to potential conflicts of interest with his wife's political work.
Okay, so why does all of this matter so much? Because these revelations, they strike right at the heart of the Supreme Court's credibility. They've kicked off this fierce national debate about transparency and accountability, and they raise a really fundamental question. Shouldn't the most powerful judges in the country be held to a stricter, enforceable code of ethics to preserve public trust?
Which, brings us right back to where we started. When the history books are written, what will Justice Thomas be remembered for? Will it be his powerful legal philosophy that fundamentally reshaped American law? Or will his legacy ultimately be defined by the controversies that have followed him from the very beginning? That's a question that history, and maybe you, will have to decide.